We've been using SKAdNetwork for about a quarter, maybe a little longer. How's it going? Is it working? Who's it working for? And can you get great predictive LTV out of SKAN? Can you make it performant? Let's talk through all these things and get the answers. We're chatting with Singular CTO Eran Friedman. Welcome, Eran. Let's start right at the top. Can you make SKAN performant? And if so, how?
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer is, in my opinion, definitely yes, because I am seeing some marketers who can make it work and seeing great results. But it's not that easy for sure. I think most of the industry today is struggling, it's kind of trying to make it work. But there are definitely ways to help there and kind of improve it iteratively on these. Sure.
If you had to slap a number on it, and I realize that we haven't done a 6-month study on this and calculated all the variables. If you had to slap a number on it, how effective is SCAD network right now in comparison to the old days of IDFA and iOS 13, 14, that sort of thing?
Uh, yeah. So I think, well, it's obviously very different, right? Like, things used to be very easy for us. You'd get like all the device level data. You could just like aggregate your numbers, just see the results. So in Scan, it's completely different. Has to work kind of on this aggregated and predicted, kind of sets. Uh, but I would say that you can, at least from for the marketers who could make it work, then definitely they've been able to get to comparative results basically with the IDFA without the device level data. So again, this is really the early stages, but we do see that some have been successful.
Interesting. So what you're saying is for those who have invested the effort and the time and tried hard to make it work, they're getting comparable results.
For sure. Yes. And again, this is only the early stages. So we see how things develop. But yes, the initial kind of period seems promising for the ones who really made it.
Who are those? Who's really invested the time and the effort to make SCAN work and perform?
Yeah. So honestly, it's they're the early adopters, right? The ones who kind of got into Scan from the early days and had spent a while running a lot of tests. So that's kind of the first thing. And that required a certain learning curve. So,
Mhm.
the earlier better. And second, what definitely helps, and we'll probably talk about it soon, is kind of thinking about how you can predict more of your performance in a short time period. So if you've invested time in your BI, in your prediction models, then it becomes much more easier to optimize your campaigns and scale.
If you look at those who have been early adopters, is that largely the large brands? Is it the major players in mobile publishing and marketing? Are there small players in there as well?
Yeah, I would say that these are kind of the sophisticated marketers for sure. Some of these are definitely some of the top brands that have very large budgets that they're trying to optimize. But we also saw some success for some of the smaller players as well. Some of the hyper casual game developers, for example, we've seen some great success with Scan and they're happy. So definitely we can see it across the board.
Wow, that is interesting. Even hyper casual. I was not expecting that as part of the answer there.
I think it depends more on how much you invest in your BI and your kind of data analysis to get it to work, right? And then obviously there is matter of like how you use it, how your users behave, and kind of the type of apps you're trying to promote. But definitely there's a lot you can do to get it to perform.
hmm Okay, let's talk about pLTV. You hinted at it earlier. Predictive LTV is one of many metrics in mobile user acquisition. Why is pLTV so important right now in relation to the others?
Yeah. So pLTV was always kind of an important metric to look at, but I think that now with all the privacy changes, obviously IDFA and SKAN, but also others like Facebook's announcement with the AMN program becomes even more important because, uh, again, before like everything was kind of easy, you could just look at your campaigns and your users through their entire lifetime and see exactly whether they performed or not. Now you just won't have it as an option anymore for some of your campaigns. So the main way to really see what their performance is to understand their pLTV and see the results just in the short term that you have with these users. So it just becomes more important to really analyze your campaigns.
And it's a funny way of putting it really because predictive LTV used to be very nice to have because you could know in advance and make quicker changes and quicker optimizations. Now it's essential, not just nice to have, not just, hey, that would be great if we could. If you don't have that, you've got real challenges understanding the value of your campaigns. In the early days of SKAdNetwork, we thought of many different ways of using the 6 bits of data that SKAN returns. What's changed? Has our thinking evolved on this?
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting to think about the evolution of how the industry is kind of getting used to SKAN. Like the first stage was just like getting the data, like some kind of data, and like doing all kinds of tests, and like the initial models were like a complete wreck. Barely they weren't even making sense. That's what's kind of the first part. And
This is
companies
data science, right? I mean, nothing makes sense
exactly,
until you
exactly.
do it 10 times.
Exactly. And kind of companies got to that stage and kind of build the initial kind of BI reporting, starting seeing the data and figuring out how it looks like. Then the second stage was to actually make it accurate. Like there's all kinds of challenges there in kind of like privacy thresholds and like mixing data and all of that part. You have to get that right because you need to be confident about the data. And we see that honestly, a lot of in the industry is struggling with that part now, but sophisticated marketers, again, the ones who are early to this, they're already past that. They already have these models who can kind of complete the mixing information. They know how to tweak and optimize its privacy thresholds. So that was kind of the second stage of the evolution, I would say. Now that you have data that you can trust, then the companies are thinking, how can I optimize and scale? Which is kind of the next big challenge. And for that, you actually need to networks to optimize a lot on your campaign, be able to do that. And for that, you need to give them proper signals. That signals really are ROS or LTV, right? If you can tell them what's the predicted LTV of the user within the 24 hours as part of scan postbacks, then the networks would find it much easier to find more of these users and sets. So that's where the companies have been investing more these days.
Complicated. You can't just get it right yourself. You have to get it right with others. They have to get it right. And you have to be in concert with them to get everything right to make it all work. We're reinventing the wheel. We're fixing the plane as we're flying it. Talk about how the best mobile marketers are using scan data to calculate pLTV right now. What are they doing?
Yep. So, there are few parts. First of all, you need to have a PLTV model, right? You need to come up with some kind of model. And, some of the marketers sometimes have already an existing model from the past, right? So, sometimes they don't and they need to come up with something. Usually they work with their internal data science team who come up with some kind of model to rely on the user behavior and the user segmentation and basically come up with certain multipliers that they can add or kind of increase on various cohorts that they have. So that's kind of getting the model first. Then they want to apply it to SKAdNetwork, right? And that's what kind of companies have been investing in. So at first you can basically apply it offline, possibly like look at the SKAdNetwork reports, calculate these scores and see, okay, what's the estimates of these PLTVs and if they make sense, right? Based on your conversion values. But the holy grail, the ideal is to actually encode the conversion values in real time based on pLTV. Then in that way, basically, you already notified to the ad networks every time when they get pulls back what the predicted value of the user. That requires a bit more engineering. Obviously, these are areas we're also investing in. Uh, so the ad networks would get that information directly as well.
Hmm. Hmm. And how quickly are people iterating those models? Obviously, you're unlikely to get it perfect the first time. and the world is likely to keep changing. So you're likely to gonna have to iterate that model incessantly till the end of time. How are people doing that?
Yeah, for sure. If it requires constant iteration, kind of validation of the data, those also, of course, like there is that seasonality and just like the view the behavior also changes. So they just need to keep updating the model through time and look at the current performance and see how it's, how it looks like, just how it progresses. Um, yeah.
Good. So if you're calculating pLTV, that's a great thing. How accurate are your calculations? Are you 75% accurate? How the best mobile marketers who are using SKAN data to calculate pLTV, what are they coming in at in terms of accuracy?
Yeah, so it's hard to put like a specific number to it, obviously, but I do hear from the sophisticated marketers that they got to pretty good results. They're happy with with the level of accuracy they achieve. I would say that it's probably roughly around the 80% range. Uh, but the key thing to remember here is that you don't need to really get to like the specific dollar amount of each user to make decisions, right? You basically need to understand whether this campaign is profitable and roughly by how much. So, keeping these considerations in mind, the that there's like wiggle room with the level of accuracy that you need to get to really make actions.
80% is pretty good. If you can get in and around that number, that is impressive. Do you see more room for optimization still? I mean, obviously, brands are going to continue to optimize on their models. Um, and Apple may continue to add features to SKAdNetwork. They've done that consistently over the past 8, 12 months or so. Do you see more room for optimization?
For sure. Yeah. We've barely scratched the surface until now. Like AdNetwork still didn't even update their optimization algorithms by so much or like iterated enough to really know. Those current models, they're like the very initial versions, right? Like there's definitely a lot to be done to optimize these. And I think there's tons of things to do there to optimize.
Excellent. How about in-app analytics? It's great to have pLTV right at the point of acquisition. That's super important, in fact, because then you can provide instant feedback to, well, instant, pretty quick feedback to the ad networks that you're working with. What about in-app analytics to further build on that data and understand your users early on in their usage, even if it's not first 24 hours or first 7 days? Are people doing that as well?
Yeah, so there are several elements here. First of all, you need the in-app analytics to get the signals and inputs to feed your data models. And you're right that like the most critical elements are from the first 24 or let's say 48 hours of the user lifetime. But even if you decided on like a certain pLTV back then, it's still important to collect the rest of the signals to see, to validate your thesis, right? And to
Yeah.
see how well they develop through time. Now, there's also another factor of like, if you think about in-app, it's not just about analytics, it's also about the product itself. The companies are thinking about whether they should change the boarding funnel, for example, or the in-app experience to get more signals early on, right? Thinking about the first 24 hours and how critical they are to get a better estimation.
Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. How do you see Singular helping with pLTV calculation for SKAdNetwork? I mean, there's a present reality in terms of what's going on. There's also potentially a future reality when you think about Facebook AMM, that deprecation of that program, and what that implies for the future of how MMPs work. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we see PLTV coming as as more and more critical metric for marketers to analyze in their campaigns across the board, like beyond just SKAN, also in their Android campaigns. Again, thinking about Facebook's main changes and the fact that marketers won't be able to get user level data anymore, they would need to see that those LTV values in their data. And for that, it's critical for them to really join that information together. So at Singular, we're constantly thinking about, okay, how can we kind of use those entity models from the marketers to apply in their campaigns across the board to make sure that, first of all, they can see the data, even if they don't get access to user level, or even if we don't have access to user level in SKAN. But second of all, how we can also share it with partners of choice so the partners would be able to optimize by this as well. So
Right.
making it more of a usable method for campaign optimization and scale.
Right. Right. Okay. Interesting. We should probably talk about fingerprinting because that, of course, is still happening. A lot of advertisers globally are still using that. They haven't really tried hard to transition as the top brands that you talked about have to SKAdNetwork. Um, what do you see as the future of that? Obviously, that's not something that Apple wants, and its guidelines, Apple's guidelines are against that. They seem to be turning a bit of a blind eye to it right now, but we know iOS 15 is coming out soon, and that's got a number of features which increase privacy. Do you see that as being kind of a technological answer to Apple's challenge getting all mobile marketers to adopt SKAN network?
Yes, definitely. Actually, it's all kind of speculation. That I do think that it seems at the moment that Apple isn't acting from a policy enforcement perspective, and they're going through the technology route, which I think is probably pretty smart because it's hard probably to enforce these like for an entire industry. In iOS 15, we're going to have Safari blocking IP addresses by default for HTTP requests and Private Relay getting released, which hides IP addresses across the board for users who use Private Relay. And it's clear that Apple is making more and more actions to make it harder to fingerprint users.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
I think that definitely from a technology perspective, this is only the beginning, and probably we see more developments there to make it harder. But if you think about it, even now, like on the stands, for example, like Facebook, Google, Snap, Twitter, they don't support fingerprinting either. Like
Yeah.
majority of the ad spend is going through these channels. So if you're trying to cling to, okay, I just continue fingerprinting, you won't be able to use any of the top publishers in the world because they can't do fingerprinting either. So the point being that like the entire industry is going from fingerprinting to scan and try to cling to the old ways, but it's probably pretty shortly in my.
In other words, if you're still trying to do fingerprinting, it may be working for you right now, but you're actually delaying the learning that you need to go through in order to make scan performant. And that long term is probably not going to be the best solution for you in terms of competitiveness with those who are in the same market as you, correct?
Exactly right.
Ron, thank you so much. Always a pleasure. Have a wonderful day.